Hi and welcome back to the world of ear training. Today we're going to explore the fundamentals to practice your ears efficiently. And let's begin with the basics, namely intervals. So what exactly is an interval? A musical interval is the distance between two notes in terms of pitch, and it's measured in steps. Either a half step or a whole step. A half step is one semitone on the keyboard. And if we go from E to F, that's also a half step because it's only one key away from our root note. Respectively, a whole step is two semitones away from our root note. So if we have a C, it's gonna be 1, 2. And from an E, a whole step would be 1, 2. Okay, so back to the musical intervals. Why should we bother learning different musical intervals? How do we make use of them in practice? Knowing how to identify and recognize these intervals by ear is basically essential for any musician. There are 12 basic intervals that you should learn to recognize by ear, and these are basically the building blocks for any type of music and melodies. And if you learn these intervals, you also learn to recognize more complex chords and more complex intervals down the line. So let's dive in and explore the 12 basic intervals. Right, so our first interval is called unison or perfect unison. And that's when you have two voices basically playing the same note. So if we play a C4, it's unison. The next interval is called minor second or half step. It's one semitone or one half step away from our root note. So if we play a C4, our minor second is gonna be the C sharp. Do you recognize that interval? Yeah, so that's a jaws. And it's very good to get some kind of connection with some kind of song or some kind of theme with these different intervals. And that way it will be easier to recognize the interval because you can connect it with that theme. So we have jaws for the minor second. The next interval is called the major second, two half steps away from our root note. So if we have the C4, that's gonna be a D. You know the song? So that's basically Happy Birthday. So that's one song that I connect with the major second. The next interval is the minor third. The minor third is 3 half steps. So if we have the C, 1, 2. And you know the tune? Please write in the comments if you know the tune. The next interval is the major third. That's 4 half steps away from a root note. And this interval is very common in many melodies, but I basically connect it with. And you can find your own song to connect with the major third. The next one is called the perfect fourth, 5 half steps away from root note. And I connect that with Hej tomtegubbar in Swedish. The next one is called the tritone, and that's a very common interval if you're doing horror scores or suspenseful cues. Count 6 half steps away from root. Next interval is perfect fifth. So that's the tune that I connect with the perfect fifth. The next one is called the minor sixth. So that's the tune I connect with that one. And then the next interval is called major sixth. Another tune you can connect with that interval. And of course you can write in the comments if you know these tunes that I play. The next one is called minor seventh. And the next one is called major seventh. And I connect this with the Superman theme, somehow. And of course, another popular one for major seventh is this one. Take on me, take on me. And the final interval of today is called octave. And that's when you play the same note 1 octave above, 12 semitones above. So if we have the C4, it's going to be the C5. So that's basically all the intervals you need to know to pick out the most melodies and most chords. Okay, so now we know all the basic intervals. Now let's take a look at that 5-minute daily hack that you can use to improve your hearing and get better at interval detection. Now your 5-minute daily hack as a musician is basically doing interval training, which is a method of training your ears to recognize the distance between two notes. So let's open a browser and head over to my website Morning Dew Media Education at edu.morningdewmedia.com. See you there.